In this lesson, we will focus on how a student completes the FAFSA online. The first step to completing a FAFSA electronically, either online or through the mobile app, is to create an FSA ID. Both the student and, if dependent, at least one parent will need an FSA ID. This will be considered the electronic signature. A username and password will be required, as well as a unique email address. A unique email address is needed for each FSA ID. This means that a dependent student and parent cannot use the same email address. To complete the FAFSA, it is advisable to have the following documents on hand to be sure information is correct: a Social Security card or Social Security numbers. It is important the information is entered on the FAFSA as it appears on the card. A driver's license, alien registration number for non-U.S. citizens, federal tax information, including the federal tax returns and W-2 forms, records of untaxed income, and information on assets. To complete the FAFSA, the student has options. The student can complete the FAFSA online at studentaid.gov, via the mobile app at MyStudentAid, by paper application, and a PDF form is available for download, or by phone. Students are strongly encouraged to complete the FAFSA online or by mobile app to avoid completion and processing errors. This video will focus on a step-by-step completion of the FAFSA online at studentaid.gov. The student begins at the website and selects either new or returning user and then logs in as the student. An initial application must be completed by the student. The student will then enter his FSA ID username, email, or mobile number and password, which was previously established. Once logged in, the student will select which FAFSA to complete. Between October 1st and June 30th, the FAFSA will be available for 2 separate award years. It is important to select the appropriate year FAFSA. The student's name and date of birth will be pre-populated from the FSA ID information. The student's email address and telephone number will also be pre-populated from the FSA ID information, as will the mailing address of the student. In the next step, the student's state of legal residence will be listed and will be asked if they have resided in that state for the past 5 years. If no, a new question will populate and the student will be required to list the date the residence was established. The student will also be required to list one of 3 citizenship statuses: a U.S. citizen, an eligible non-citizen, and include the alien registration number, or not an eligible U.S. citizen or eligible non-citizen. The third one does not qualify for Title IV aid. The student must then complete the high school completion status, the college degree or certificate that will be pursued during the academic year, the college grade level, if a first bachelor's degree has been earned prior to the start of the academic year, and if interested in work study. The next question will ask a student's gender, male or female. The student should answer this question based on the gender assigned at birth. Students who are male or were assigned male at birth are required to register with Selective Service within 30 days of their 18th birthday. If they are male and not registered, they can select to have registration done for them through the FAFSA. If the student has a driver's license, they should enter the number and state. The next question asks about the foster youth system. A student may qualify for additional grants if they are or were in the foster care system, so the FAFSA will inquire about being in the foster care system. Also, if known, the student should indicate the parent's highest school completed. The last section in student demographics asks if the student has ever received federal student aid. If no, that is the end of the student demographics. If yes, additional questions must be answered related to drug offenses. Now that the student demographics are completed, the student moves on to school selection and needs to provide the name, city, and state of the high school attended. After inputting the high school information about the college or colleges the student is interested in attending will be added. For students who are just entering college, this may be a large list. The student can add up to 10 colleges at one time. There are instructions if the student has more than 10 colleges. For students who are returning to college, this may not be as difficult since they should have only one college to list unless they plan to transfer schools. If the student knows the federal school code, that can be added using that. Otherwise, the student can search for the school. Once the schools have been added, the student will need to list the appropriate housing option for each school. The student can view information if it is provided about the college that is being added, including website, tuition prices, net price average, graduation, retention, and transfer rates. The next section is dependency status. This is where it is determined if parental information is needed. The questions are based on skip logic, so as the student answers no, more questions are presented. If the student answers yes to any of the questions stop and parental information is optional since the student would be considered independent. Even if the student is considered a dependent student and parental information is required, information about the parents may not be able to be provided due to special circumstances. That question is presented to the student. If the student answers, "I will provide information about my parents," because there is no special circumstance, the application moves into parent demographics. We will cover what happens if the student answers, "I am unable to provide information about my parents," in another lesson video. This video will cover an independent student based on marital status and age. On this question, the student would have answered married, which would make the student independent. The FAFSA then moves on to determine if the student is independent with dependents or independent without dependents, so the next question involves children and other dependents. Once those questions are asked, the next question is about household size and number in college. Based on the previous questions, the household size has been calculated, including the student and the spouse. The number of children who receive more than 50% of the independent student support will need to be added. The total household size is blocked to be calculated by the system. Once that is done, the number in college should be updated as well. It should include at least one, the student, but can be adjusted for more should this independent student have others also attending college, such as a spouse or children. The next section is for parent demographics. Since this is an independent student, parental information is optional. However, there are some schools which require parental information from all students. In this case, the student decides not to provide parent information, so the skip logic skips the parent demographics and parent financial sections of the FAFSA. The last section to provide information is student financials. The student will indicate if a tax return was completed for the base tax year. If yes, the student will indicate the type of tax return and the filing status. Then the student can link to the IRS using the IRS data retrieval tool, also known as the IRS DRT, if the student is eligible. The student can then proceed to the IRS site, enter information from their tax return, which must match exactly. Once they submit their request, if it matches, and the IRS locates the tax information, it will list the data available to be transferred. The student has the option to transfer or not to transfer. The student should transfer the data to the FAFSA. Once this has been completed, a confirmation on the FAFSA will be listed and the student can complete the FAFSA. There will still be items to be completed, but any data element that has already been transferred from the IRS will now say transferred from IRS. Any blank item will need to be entered, such as income earned from working. The student will also need to provide information about any untaxed income since that is not provided from the IRS. If the student did not complete taxes, only information about income earned from working will need to be provided. The last financial section for the student is related to assets. There will be a question related to assets for the student, and this information must be provided. The final step is to sign and submit the FAFSA. If there is no paid preparer, the answer to this question should be no. The student will then review the FAFSA information. If it is correct, it is ready for signatures and submission. The student will review the information and agree to the terms. The independent student will provide the FSA ID as a signature and submit the FAFSA. Once submitted, the student will receive a confirmation page and later an email. This concludes this video lesson on submitting the FAFSA online.